Quite a drastic shift, right? But this difference goes far beyond just a change in tone or cinematography. Alfonso Cuarón's arrival in the franchise completely transformed the way the magical world of Harry Potter had been presented up to that point. Even if we can't quite pinpoint exactly what those changes were, we can certainly feel them. And whether you like the tone Cuarón brought to this film or not, the fact is, he set the direction the franchise would follow from then on. The one who first brought Harry Potter to the screen was Chris Columbus, who directed the first two films. And I believe he did a spectacular job of translating the magic of this world into cinema with Philosopher's Stone. It's in that very first movie that we're introduced to what wizards and muggles are, to magic itself, and to the places where it comes alive. But there's something else that fascinates us about this world: the magical objects. And the most important of them all are the wands. Now, even though the first film does include the scene at Ollivander's and establishes that every wizard has their own specific wand, that idea isn't really shown in depth until Prisoner of Azkaban. It was Alfonso Cuarón who decided that each character would have their own uniquely designed wand, almost as if the wand was a reflection and extension of the wizard's personality. It's details like this that add so much depth to this fantasy world, giving it an even stronger visual identity. And of course, it also made Warner a fortune with wand sales. Another essential element in building the atmosphere of Harry Potter is the soundtrack. John Williams, probably the greatest film composer in history, was the one who scored the first 3 movies. He brought to life themes like Hedwig's theme, Harry's Wondrous World, Leaving Hogwarts, and many others that shaped the franchise's identity on the big screen and introduced us to the magic of this world. Those are probably the most recognizable and most remembered by everyone. But there's one particular theme that I think is highly underrated and that perfectly captures the unique atmosphere of Prisoner of Azkaban: A Window to the Past. And that title is no coincidence, it's deeply symbolic of what the piece represents. A window into Harry's past, or perhaps even more importantly, into his inner self. Prisoner of Azkaban can actually feel quite intimate at times, and that's especially clear in moments like Harry's conversations with Professor Lupin. Here the film steps a bit away from the larger saga. There's no Voldemort hiding behind a professor's head, nor fragments of his memory trying to resurface through a mysterious diary. Even the supposed villain of this film eventually turns out to be yet another figure from Harry's past, bringing to light themes like his connection, or lack thereof, with his family. These are the aspects that make A Window to the Past stand out so much, to the point where it feels like a theme uniquely tied to Prisoner of Azkaban. The very construction of the theme is extremely unique, largely because of its distinct flute sounds. That instrument also ties back to another remarkable aspect of this film: the sound design. More specifically, the sound design of the spells. During the production of Philosopher's Stone, there came a point when it was necessary to define what magic would actually sound like in Harry Potter. Chris Columbus made it clear he didn't want anything that felt modern or futuristic. The goal was to go in the opposite direction of what had been done in Star Wars, for instance. From that point on, a style of sound design emerged that was characterized by whooshes and sounds inspired by natural elements: fire, ice, even explosive tones. This style was carried over into the sequel, but once again it was in Prisoner of Azkaban that things took a slightly different turn.
Expelliarmus! Expelliarmus!
In the third film, the explosive sounds were replaced by the softness of flutes, making the spells sound more like whispers of the wind, and giving magic a far more mysterious atmosphere. And once again, this change had a huge impact on the films that followed, which leaned much more into this style of sound design than the one established in Christopher Columbus's first 2 movies. The Hogwarts uniform was brilliantly designed for Philosopher's Stone, in my opinion even better than how it was described in the books. In the books, all students wore the same plain black work robes regardless of their house, along with a pointed black hat. In the films, however, the production decided that each student's uniform would incorporate their house colors, which I think was a great decision. The uniform went through some small adjustments in Chamber of Secrets, but nothing too significant. In Prisoner of Azkaban, though, the differences are much more noticeable. But more important than the actual design changes of the uniforms, what really stands out to me in the third film compared to the previous ones is the way each uniform is worn, depending on the character who's using it.
So we have an evolution of this uniform. Early on we said, okay,
How would you wear your uniform if your parents were not around?
He said that you should like customize it how you would if you were really at school, so it feels more natural.
They start doing weird things with ties or taking the shirts out. Some of the kids stocking everything and trying to be very neat.
We all started wearing Slytherin rings, Slytherin tie pieces.
This made everything feel much more natural, since it's hard to imagine all students wearing their uniforms in the exact same way. On top of that, Cuarón introduced another significant change to the costumes. Starting with this film, whenever the students were outside the classroom, they would dress in a more casual, contemporary, and normal way, unlike the earlier films where they wore their uniforms most of the time.
My first meeting with Alfonso, he was telling me that the kids should be more normal.
What I really wanted to do is to do it more contemporary. This film takes place in 2003, 2004. Let's see how the kids are dressed in 2003, 2004.
This shift played a major role in shaping each character's visual identity, allowing us to understand their personalities and backstories on a deeper level, even if only indirectly. This decision also brought the magical world closer to everyday reality, making it feel more grounded. And while some fans might dislike this change since it strays a bit from how wizards dress in the books, it's undeniable that it set a new direction for the costumes in the films that followed. Although Hogwarts had already been well presented in the first two films, it was from Prisoner of Azkaban onward that its structure became more clearly defined. Several changes were made to Hogwarts in the third film. Some familiar locations like Hagrid's hut were moved. It went from here, a flat plain almost within the school grounds, to there, on the side of a hill. And from this film on, that's where the hut would remain. No major changes after that. In addition, Cuarón and his team also changed the location of another iconic part of the castle, the Whomping Willow. In the first film, we don't see the tree anywhere on the Hogwarts grounds, but in Chamber of Secrets, it suddenly appears here. Then, in Prisoner of Azkaban, the tree was moved to a much more distant location. But this film didn't just rearrange existing structures, it also added new ones that had never been seen before, like the wooden bridge, the clock tower courtyard, and the sundial garden, which gave us this really great scene. For them, it was important not only to define the iconic locations that make up Hogwarts, but also to show how these different parts connect to one another. These changes were essential in shaping Hogwarts in the audience's imagination as a place that, while magical, still feels close to reality, a space with distinct parts that come together as a coherent whole. The expansion of Hogwarts and its grounds fundamentally broadened the scale of the castle, anchoring it much more convincingly within this world. Personally, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite in the franchise, and I know it's the favorite of many others as well. But I also understand why some people don't enjoy the film, maybe because of certain adaptation issues compared to the book.
You take pride in being an insufferable know-it-all.
He's got a point, you know.
Or because it leaves aside important storylines. Even its very different atmosphere sets it apart so strongly from the rest. I think the film's biggest flaw is how it practically ignores the Marauders storyline. If you're not familiar with the books, you could finish the movie without even knowing exactly who they are. And since up to this point we've been talking about the positive legacy that Prisoner of Azkaban left for the franchise, this is precisely the element that represents a negative legacy. After all, the Marauders are essential not only in this film, but in shaping the entire saga. Even so, I still believe the movie fulfills its role and does an excellent job of building and expanding this universe. You may agree or disagree with me, love Prisoner of Azkaban or not, but one thing is undeniable. Despite his brief time in the franchise, Alfonso Cuarón changed Harry Potter forever.